Sure. All right, 6 o'clock, we're gonna call the meeting of the Charter Township of Bedford Planning Commission to order. If we could start with the pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call when you're ready.
Okay. Roll call trustees, Stacy Greenwood,
Here?
Commissioner Claudia Brown. Yes. Shirley Tuggle, here. Tawny Walters.
Yep.
Kevin Vallison,
Yes.
Chairman Mike Stab,
Here.
Barbara Jones is excused. Have a quorum of the commissioners present.
Thank you. And let that absent report show that, Commissioner Jones did reach out to me several days ago and let me know that she was unable to make it, but she did enclose some comments for us. So, nice of her to do. Next item on the agenda is going to be approval of the May 21st, 2024 agenda. Do I have a motion?
So motion. Support.
By Brown and supported by Greenwood. Any discussion on the agenda itself? All right, seeing none, roll call please.
Chairman Mike Stab,
Yes.
commissioners. Tony Walters,
Yeah.
Claudia Brown,
Yeah.
Kevin Vallison,
Yes.
trustee Stacy Greenwood,
Yes.
and Shirley Tuggle, yes. That is 6 affirmative. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the April 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes.
On motion. I'll second.
Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, seeing none, roll call please.
All right. Commissioners, Claudia Brown. Trustee Stacy Greenwood.
Yes.
Shirley Tuggle, yes. Tony Walters.
Yeah.
Kevin Vallison.
Yes.
Chairman Mike Stab.
Yes.
Affirmative of 6, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next item is our liaison report from trustee Greenwood.
We don't have anything coming down at the moment. I do have a question for Cody. I know that we have the recommendation for the marijuana zoning ordinance, and that's just kind of sitting, so we're waiting on licensing.
Mhm.
Do you know where we're at with, the facilities that have applied for licensing?
Wolverine has renewed all 16 of theirs. They have not turned in more yet, knowing it's coming. Oh, I still haven't told them the exact amount. I told them 25 each is probably a safe bet, because that's kind of what we've based this off of.
Yep.
I have not heard anything really from Paisley regarding it. They did reach out, Mark did, Tuesday, I believe it was last week, asking if we had an updated copy of the zoning ordinance. Though since we haven't done anything since the last time he was here, I told him we haven't yet. But yeah, as far as I know, we're just waiting on the final number of licenses for the outdoor grows. If that's 50, that's fine. I think they'll both be okay with that. I don't see why they wouldn't immediately get those 25. We end up, in the future, one only wanted 20, the other is gonna snatch up that 5, because they're really the only ones that can.
Okay, and then for our legal counsel, is it okay to keep waiting on the zoning ordinance and do the licensing and zoning back to back, or is there a limitation on when that needs to be done by?
No, it's within the discretion of the board.
Okay,
And it went through its process. We had the public hearing here. It went to county. And I don't think they had anything additional to add from
Sure.
county. So
Okay.
it comes up to the board and you can move on that when you're ready. I think part of it was to figure out the licenses, right? And then the other part too, that's for a site plan amendment to the planning commission, because if they're getting, like, especially the outdoor roads, because like, once those are prohibited, then they have a lawful non-conforming use, but you can't expand them.
right,
So the idea was, if you want to expand the businesses on that property, get a site plan amendment in planning commission for what you want. Because sometimes development occurs in phases and they come back as needed. But do it, get what you want, and if the planning commission approves it, that way you're at least protected, and you can still add on pursuant to your site plan, even if it becomes a non-conforming use.
okay,
I don't think they've submitted anything to the township, and I don't know where they are in that process.
We're still waiting for as far as Paisley, we're still waiting for them to give us the full plan for the greenhouse. We're
Yes.
still waiting on the MEP plan. When he came in a few weeks ago, he mentioned, the green tax, what they're getting charged. So they were still shopping around for someone to do those plans, it sounded like to me. Wolverine, I'm not sure where they're at outside of, I reminded them when they turned in their new licenses, like, hey, if you're still gonna do this, we gotta get moving on it, without anything from their lawyer or Brian, the owner.
so the recommendation would be to do both of those at the same time. I think it would be advantageous to do both at the same time. So just whenever we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only thing I have as far as the board goes.
I know it's quite a wait to get an engineer's site plan right now, like, there seems to be a backup like everywhere. So I don't know if that's the issue, or that far, or that far, or not. I don't know.
All right. Anything else, trustee group? Thank you. Next item is the zoning report, from our building administrator, Cody McCarty. He's, enclosed that in the packet. Did you have anything that you wanted to specifically reference in that, Cody, or?
No, just, something I didn't add in here, but since writing this, I've probably had 8 to 10 people call in and ask we do something about it. People mowing the lawn into the road. I've been getting, daily multiple calls about it. It's not a state law.
Pulling grass under the road.
Yeah, it's not a state law, but they can't do that, but, from what I can tell, a lot of places do have ordinances against it, so something they might consider.
I think it'd be a courtesy.
If that was something that, to address, that's gonna be at the board level with police powers, is it not?
I think so. That would be more of a township wide.
Yep.
Ordinance.
Anything else, Cody?
Nope, that's it, Ron.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is gonna be public comment time. This is gonna be on agenda items only, please. Any public comment time for anyone? We'll open that at 6:09.
I'm gonna do the next one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
Here we go.
On agenda items only.
Yeah, Chris Over 780 West Kirby Road. One of the things I'm seeing on here, maybe I'm just not understanding it, but what you're talking about, keeping, animals in the draft zoning ordinance. And it kind of goes back and forth between like outside of the rural agriculture district, and then it says like, other than what's allowed there. Then it comes down later and it says like, here's what's allowed to be kept as domestic livestock, and it says like 1 cow per acre, pigs per acre. I mean, we have 25 acres. I mean, we can only have 25 cows or so many pigs or this or that. Too many animals on my land, but all the big farms, dairy farms, they could have 1,000 cows on one farm. So that might be unnecessarily restricting what, like firms are able to do. Because they're not all raising them, like generally the 1 cow per acre is like, if you're grazing it, you want to give them enough grass and stuff, do that. But not everybody raises them that way. So a lot of them raise them in a dry lot where they're just feeding them hay and feed. And they'll have many animals in there. So that wouldn't be, if that's the way I'm understanding it, that's the way that they were trying to write the minute or the ordinances in there, that wouldn't really be in line with, what state agricultural practices would be. So that'd just be something on there. So that's just something I kind of saw on there. I don't know how it, fits into that part, the different discussion of items for next meeting. Stuff going in there, but it all kind of goes into it. So as like a small farmer and stuff like that, one way we want to be able to do it is that we want to talk about like accessory buildings and all that, is to be able to have like a small farm stand up front, be able to sell our products. We've got meat and pigs and, stuff like that. So the way it's currently written says seasonal, temporary structure, seasonal, for seasonal use to sell produce. And that's it. It doesn't say anything about eggs, and everybody in the township selling eggs out of their farm stand, or, meat and stuff like that. So just, if it could just be kind of worded to like agricultural products. And I think the new one even said produced on that farm, or that location. Well, we've got 2 locations. We've got farm here and we lease another property near Hickory, and we make meat from both places. So, I think limiting it to just products produced at that location would be unnecessarily restrictive for, just with all the stuff going on, we want to keep, Bedford as this rural residential and, beautiful Bedford and all that, and embrace the agricultural history that's here. One of the only ways small farms are going to be profitable is to be able to sell their product direct to the consumer. So I just want to make sure we don't unnecessarily restrict their ability to do that. And that's something that we kind of want to do and we're looking into. I just want to make sure it's not restricted from some rule of something. That's all I got.
I did have a clarifying question I'd like to ask. Is your concern is with the zoning ordinance draft or what we currently?
Well, I don't know which way you guys go, because there's the current one.
Yep.
The current sign, and it falls under roadside stands, right?
Okay.
So the current roadside stand definition, if you look at the definition, says a temporary structure for seasonal use to sell produce.
And it should be agricultural products.
That's what I feel like, because that doesn't even let somebody sell eggs. And how many egg site, people are selling their chicken eggs off the side, it's just someone
And then-
to help support.
And then in the current draft, do you feel that the language is
The current one I was trying to.
too restrictive as far
I
as
believe it says.
being produced at
that
the location?
property, right?
Right.
So my parents have property near Hickory Corners and we keep cows and goats and stuff up there. And we grow produce up there in a garden. So if the ordinance was written that we can only do stuff that's produced at our property, then technically I couldn't sell the stuff out of our garden or the land that we lease or our animals, or say it was crops, so maybe a bigger farmer. So stuff like that.
We will talk about
All right.
it. Thank you. Any other public comment? No, okay.
Oh, very good.
I just want to support what's just said. And add, we don't have anything but chickens. And, the wording of chickens varies in the ordinances in terms of, it starts out, like Chris mentioned, with the rural RRAO, whatever that is, which we're in. But then it kind of detours from that later on when you talk about chickens. And it says 1 chicken to 1/10 of an acre. Now, does that really apply to RRAO, whatever, or does that really apply to the entire township? I just wouldn't, I know, I've read the new ordinance and I'm like, maybe we need to clarify that a little bit better as to how each one of those sections applies. And we have eggs too. That's. Oh,
Can't do that.
Thank you. We're all going down.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close that at 6:15. Okay, first item is, that we're gonna discuss is, gonna be number 8, discussion of old business. First item under that is gonna be the commercial scale outdoor gun range ordinance. In your packet, you'll find the, draft language that was prepared for us by McKenna. Does anybody have, well, I find my notes. Does anybody have anything that they would like to start us off on that? Connie, do you have anything? Okay. Having anything specifically that you know? Claudia,
No, I think it's good.
Shirley,
Thing.
same. Trustee Greenwood,
We may potentially get a little bite back from the board. It is a hot button issue. I'm just wondering if we know how many parcels meet the requirements for the 40 acres. I don't know. I know that we have, I think it's 12 major parcels.
right? Well, I mean, so that was one of the things that I wanted to discuss. Do you want to discuss that? Do you have anything else that you'd like to?
I don't, I mean, I don't.
Specifically,
I
I guess?
don't. I,
Right,
I'm just saying,
Okay.
I do think that when questioned about it, since it is a hot button issue, I will be asked, where did this come from? And why does the planning commission feel that it's necessary to have it?
okay,
And I just want to have the appropriate answers
okay.
for everyone when we make the
When
recommendation.
we go there?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else as far as that goes specifically? Okay, so I guess let's start with, I've just got three quick things here. The minimum lot size that we've got for the commercial outdoor gun range, 40 acres. We had, talked as a commission, we didn't know where we were gonna fall on that, whether it be, 10, 20. 40 definitely seems larger, than.
That's large.
Yeah, I think given some of the standards that they have for, noise and, safety and whatnot, I would think that we could look at reducing that size. But to, I guess, piggyback off of what Trustee Greenwood, was saying, it is gonna be a hot button issue. So if we do decrease that size, that is gonna make that more available, obviously. So I guess we would need to discuss that. I don't, 40 seems big to me.
40 seems.
I know that we had kind of thrown out 10 or 20.
Yeah, we're.
10 seems small to me. I mean, I don't really know.
That's too small.
Yeah, and part of the reason that we were thinking that, 10 might be a good one was we were looking for, we were going through the zoning ordinance itself and looking at, what other minimums we have, like for the outdoor, for marijuana, it's, 10 acres and so on and so forth. So I think that's kind of where we got that number as far as trying to have like consistency with different uses. But I don't necessarily know if we have to have that way of thinking. Seth, I don't know
Yeah, so,
if,
yeah, when I looked into the ordinance today and then when I researched it a little bit, the three things that jumped out to me, first is, and I think someone mentioned, either Stacy or Mike, that it could be a political hot potato, so policies, and, this type of thing you want. Planning commission, it's in here, so it sounds like you're just considering it. Ultimately, the township board makes the final call on whether or not to approve an ordinance. Second thing is noise. Okay, our townships that have gun ranges in them, the only complaints we really see or hear about is noise. People are out there, firing off a bunch of rounds and bothers people. And part of that comes into, minimum lot size, protects that. When I saw 40 acres, I was gonna ask, and you asked before I could, was how many parcels are there, within these zoning district classifications where it's gonna be allowed as a special land use that can accommodate, that gun range. I don't know. I mean, either your assessor might know,
I can figure it out.
But,
There, so.
yeah, I would say that if you're good with the provisions of this ordinance, and the question more is how many parcels can accommodate it, I would try to find that answer out and then evaluate from there. Do we need to go smaller? You know, and then, you know, if you look at 40 and there's only like, you know, a few parcels, and you go down to 30, there's a whole bunch more, maybe it makes sense to reduce a little bit. Okay? Was that a question?
I have that. I know it covers it on how far from lot lines. But many of the parcels in this township is not square. For instance, my parcel is a half mile long, but it's only 267 feet wide,
Hmm.
and it's 14 acres. So, but if you gotta be 900 feet from the lot line, then that's gonna knock it down a lot too. So I guess you gotta look at how is the parcel configured,
So the setbacks, so you.
right?
I did one of the other things, so. Again, Cody, is that something that you can look into us for us and see exactly how many parcels are we talking about?
If I'll do 40, 30, and 20.
Let's do, so my personal general feeling here is that 40 might be a little bit too big. I would think either 20 or 25 might be the number that we do. So, I mean, if we can decide what parameters we want to give Cody. So, I mean, I think 25 is probably a good number.
I think, yeah, 'cause I think 20 is too low.
Okay.
Again, depending on how the lay of the land is too.
Right,
It does, and that's gonna kind of be tricky, and I don't want Cody to have to spend 10 years looking at every 30-acre parcel. Yeah, do we want to do 40 and 25 and just have him do a case study like he's done with us for other stuff?
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you, Cody. Thank you.
Right, so 40 and 25 there, if we can, and then we can make the decision on that. The other thing that I had noticed, as far as the number, it's gonna be number 8, the operational noise levels from the gun range may not exceed 70 decibels max that measured at the property line of the gun range. I feel like that number is actually in conflict with what our noise ordinance or noise allowable is in the actual draft. I believe it was 60 in the actual draft.
It's actually low.
Which is lower.
I mean, it's real low, 60.
You won't be able to address that, like, unless
Right.
otherwise specified in this ordinance.
Yeah, so my question was, like, I certainly don't mind protecting the residents as far as the noise, because that is gonna be the number one complaint.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that needed to match what we had on the books, or if that can be unique to this land use.
Yeah, I think you could qualify it for,
Okay.
for this type of use. You see that, there's general ordinances, and a lot of times you'll see in industrial, they get bumped up because there's gonna be higher
Okay.
higher, intensive uses.
And I did see that, it kind of ranged in some of the samples that we looked at anywhere between that 55 and as much as 80. I think I saw one as high as 90, but that seemed very high.
Keep in mind, like, on the last page 4, paragraph 11, I mean, there's a hook in there that allows the planning commission to revoke a special use permit. If there are constant problems.
Mhm.
So, and, there is a way to enforce that, we should be aware of that.
And then I had one.
If I may,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And then for 8 on the decibel level,
Mhm.
you have a sudden decibel as a shot, or you talk sustained decibel
We talked
there.
sudden.
So, I mean, if you have a free fire, for instance, a whole group of people, it's gonna be very loud. But one single shot can get very high, and then of course it drops off. Obviously.
So I think it would it's viewed just whatever that decimal reading is at the property line, can't exceed that.
There's,
10 guns, 100 guns.
LMAC, okay, depends on that. If we make the standard that you shall not exceed 70 decibels.
That's just what it is. I don't think I have anything else on that. Overall, I was very, very pleased with, what McKenna put together for us. We appreciate that.
Very much.
There was one thing. So I did notice that a lot that we took definitely, was, has components of the NRA standards or whatever. We had talked about maybe having that, as a guide, but I feel like these standards here are pretty common and uniform. Some of them actually kind of exceed what would be the recommended thing, and then I feel like are right on par. So I just wanted to point out that we did not put that in there, some of the samples we looked at said, see NRA for guidelines. I mean, we kind of took that ourselves and did that with the, well, McKenna did that. As far as that goes. So that was the only other thing that we had kind of talked about, maybe incorporating in there that didn't necessarily get in there word for word. So want to make sure everybody was okay with that. Overall, I'm very, very pleased. And I think if we just get, some clarification on the 40 acres,
Mhm.
this is my opinion. I guess Kyle's gonna be asking me here in about 2 seconds. So can we put this into the, into the draft or not? Is everybody okay with adding this? It'll be section 4.30, range gun outdoor. That's what we have right now.
Just say we move it forward and see what the board says.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I'm agreeable.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kyle. We can slide it over there for it, sir. Appreciate it. And Cody, sometime for the next meeting, we can see him. Okay, next item under old business is gonna be the accessory dwelling units. Also, in a memo prepared to us, by McKenna and Kyle, also in your packet. Does anybody have any specific comments about that? Yeah, so we had discussed that we thought we were gonna go ahead and incorporate this into the zoning ordinance. We just needed the language to allow it. We just had a couple of small things. I did not see a minimum square footage.
That's what I'm looking for right
Yeah.
now. I don't see.
And I know we had talked kind of briefly about that. We had I thought, kicked around 600 being,
Yep, 6 or 650, because I know we talked about, the ones I have are 4 something, and they're way too small. The other thing we talked
Mhm.
about, I think, was the one restricted how many bedrooms could be in there. And I'm hoping that we took that out.
right,
Okay,
this has a requirement, what needs to be there.
Like, what's the one that just got? Like what Barb was talking about with her neighbor?
Yes, Barb, we'll get to her comments here in just a second.
Oh,
I've got to find, but they're here in Brown. So is there a way that we can incorporate that into there? Are we okay with 6 or 650?
Yeah.
Okay. Claudia, is that?
yeah, that's fine. I would even go with 6. Because I have something to compare it to in my head. You guys don't. You know what I'm saying? That's how I can.
I
But,
stayed in a small little horse house at an Airbnb.
but yeah, either one, I
But-
agree with.
I think we should do 6. Yes, that is slightly smaller than what like a 1-bedroom would be, but I mean, the idea here is to give a family the opportunity to have, someone, I think a lot of families is gonna take advantage of this. And that, I mean, 50 square feet doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, with building costs and everything,
Right.
that could be substantial. I mean,
So the ones I have are smaller than that. They're a 1-bedroom.
are they? Okay,
Yeah. And it's great for one person.
sure,
You put 2 in there, it's a bit small, especially when you start, pulling furniture in there.
right.
So that's why I'm thinking, 6 is, I think 6 would be a good number.
Okay, you'd be okay with that?
Do you
And
have,
that's just the minimum, you can go bigger.
Correct, yeah, no, that's all we're, yeah, we're not, there's no way to like put a cap on it. But I mean, we're just talking about what, you know, and I think that is big enough to where we're not, you know, we don't want a bunch of small little,
Right, they don't, we don't want them looking like shacks. We don't, you know what I'm saying? We
little
want
shots
know,
or whatever,
Um,
so.
something that looks nice.
did you have? I'm not sure if I saw anything, was there any discussion on number of occupants per ADU?
Kind of fall under the building code. And leave it up to the building code, frankly.
Yes, so we did discuss that, but a lot of the building code stuff will take care of
Awesome,
of
okay,
that per se. Obviously, we did want, you know, the principal owner to be on site, and that's in there. I mean, that was one of the other big things that we discussed that we wanted. And I think that's a very good thing. And it won't matter. I mean, if the principal owner would like to live in the ADU, they can do that and give the kids the house, that's fine, but the owner has to be on site.
Right.
That, we were thinking that was really a good idea to help control, you know, the blight situation. And we don't want a bunch of properties that have 2 rentals on them, obviously, as well.
And then to avoid having them to come to the planning commission every time, we did write it in as a permitted use, subject to meeting other conditions. Otherwise, the community is required to be a special land use, but now you're doing a public hearing every time you want a property.
Makes sense.
okay.
And is everybody okay? I mean, we kind of, I can't remember if you were here for, I think you were here for that, Stacy, but,
Yeah, when the start of the discussion, but yeah,
but we don't need 30 more applications, public hearings. Or whatever the number can end up being. I did have a question as far as the permitted districts that we're gonna allow that in. It's RRAOS and then neighborhood residential. Is that, you know, neighborhood residential is definitely smaller lots, obviously. I mean, is that something that we want to think about not allowing in the neighborhood residential?
It's up to you. We did leave off the lake districts because they're tiny lots.
Right,
You're not gonna find someone into it.
sure,
Neighborhood residential though would be good, because you know, they're already probably established, or we already have water and sewer, so the connect to it would be there as well.
Okay.
It's up to the planning commission of how you wanna do it. Like we know in the past, we know that there's housing authority who will
Mm-hmm.
say offering it in both districts, so people could take advantage of that. Would work there, but again, they still have to meet all the requirements as well.
Sure.
It would just be a free for all, the neighborhood residential, it would have to be.
well, the,
Fairly detached, right? Somebody could build on top of their garage or something, or.
you know, so these are detached
Okay.
structures, freestanding. You know,
So-
accessory buildings.
okay, I have a bit of a rebuttal for that, and I'm in agreement with you.
Okay,
Because this will happen, you know, this is going to happen eventually in the Wellington neighborhood. The parcels are so compact,
Right.
with the sewer and water, because
Sure.
we don't have appropriate infrastructure, and we know we're gonna have to deal with that issue. So putting another unit in that area, I don't think would be appropriate. There are neighborhoods that are really, really tight, that we would consider neighborhood residential.
right.
So
Should we
that,
go by
that would be a
acreage?
concern.
Do we
for-
put a number on it for lot size or
No,
just take it out?
Or,
I-
it's a district, right?
yeah, correct. We would regulate that by the district. So I definitely have some concerns about neighborhood residential, them being able to even meet the setback requirements.
Right.
In some of those tinier lots. I would also be concerned for the residents that, you know, I mean, yeah, like, they are definitely packed. The smaller lots, they're packed in more. Now, all of a sudden, we're gonna allow, you know, you lived there for 30 years and all of a sudden, we're gonna allow the neighbor to put up a building and they're gonna have, you know, more people in it and things like that. I mean, I feel like it makes sense in the RRAOS because you have more space.
Mhm.
Obviously, most of that is gonna be, you know, septic hookup, you know, you have ample area for, you know, hookup and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just see, I see homeowners investing in a property that could be a massive liability.
For sure. Sure.
So,
You take it out?
Yeah, I would, I think you should move to take that out and just have it in the RRAOS.
We were talking,
Yes,
you can
please.
get a permitted use in the RRAO, special land use in the NR. That way then safety could still review it, make sure that the infrastructure and everything else. And they probably want to review public hearings for the NR, but then it would allow neighbors to voice their concerns. You're not prohibiting that, but it would have a higher level of scrutiny on that, it would be NR.
I like that, because we do have so much.
do you want to take a look?
that commercial.
Yeah.
Just because we do.
I mean, we
so
do have
much
larger parcels, and
Yeah.
these are the areas that I'm most.
Look at that, but if it was especially you.
But this is all,
We have all of those.
That's what I don't like about the special use. So,
Okay.
well, I mean, yeah, we definitely don't, I mean, you know, that's no big deal. We're getting used to those. The standards for review, you know, obviously, you know, the public neighbors commenting is certainly part of that. But, you know, it would not be, you know, if they meet the specs on everything else, it would not necessarily, in my personal opinion, be grounds for it, you know, just because we have 25 neighbors down here screaming and yelling about, well, 25 might be a number that you can consider, you know, but if it's a couple of homeowners, they're like, well, I don't want it for the reason that I just discussed, then, you know, we'd really have to take a look at that. And if they meet the requirements in every other way, you know, you know, they're saying we shall approve, you know, so I mean,
I think it could. if we
I
did
think that could
it
potentially.
get Contentious too,
Correct.
as in, well, you're playing favorite and, you know, you're allowing my neighbor to. People don't understand overall generally how zoning works,
Right.
so.
So better to take it out completely.
I think if their neighbor were to get it and then they were to apply and be denied, it
Yep.
would not go well.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna wind up with us getting sued. The township anyway.
Well, I mean, even if they met the requirements,
Sure.
they wouldn't I don't think they would
Yeah.
necessarily understand why the general standards were met,
Right.
would be my concern.
I would say we take it out.
I mean, I'm kind of in that
Agreed
camp.
with-
I mean, I agree with what Kyle is saying, like we do, I mean, there is a housing shortage. Stuff is way out of price site wise, you know, and we do have an older community, so I do think that the realization that there may be quite a few people that are interested in this. And I would hate to necessarily preclude them from doing that, but I mean, at the same time, I think it either needs to be in or out. I don't think we should do one as a special land use and one not, I guess.
What if we took it out and we used that in a way that we did with marijuana, where we just sat back and engaged to see what it would look like and what would happen, and then 5 years from now, when we redo the master
Sure.
plan, we can reevaluate.
Right? That is true. So there is no law that says we can change this today to this, and then obviously if we get a ton of applicants that Cody is having to say no to, I mean, we can revisit this, obviously. I would move to handle it that way, guys. Is everybody, so we'll take it out and then just see where it goes. I mean, so we don't currently offer this as an option, so who knows?
Right.
Might get 2 applications, might get 25. I mean, you know.
So we're moving just to keep it in residential.
Yes, correct.
There's no specification on if it needs to be on like a foundation or if it can be a trailer. Accessory dwelling unit. Cause similarly to you, I've done, you know, a lot of the Airbnb tiny homes, and about half of them are built on trailers, and usually it's that 600 square foot
Yeah.
is what they can fit on a standard 12 or 15-foot trailer.
Aren't we covered with what our definition of accessory dwelling
I
unit?
know other places specify it
Okay.
can be on a trailer. But I'm not sure if that's something we want to specify.
I think that kind of goes in line with what Barb was talking about too, with the trailer.
Yes, where is Barb?
For
Go ahead.
a single family residential, like a home in your district, that someone could put in a modular or a manufactured home, so long as it's not building code. Unless you have design standards or architectural standards, I don't see anyone how preventing a manufactured home in like a neighborhood residential district so long as it's meets building code
Okay.
in that regard. So if it requires putting the foundation, we have, are there, it's something we can add if that's the concern.
Okay, so the question is, do we want to have, language for a design standard?
Like that would fix a lot of it, yeah, specify it as skirting standard. It's
Okay,
like in our, manufactured modular home, our current ordinance, it specifies what types of skirting are allowed in and outside the mobile home parks even.
okay,
So yeah, just something, cause you don't want just, the black metal trailers sitting
No,
out there,
sure.
wheels showing and,
Yeah.
cinder blocks under it, just like, yeah. And you'd hope they'd, put something up and insulate or something, but, you never know.
So that in, like, that will require footings and foundations, shall be on a permanent, fixed structure.
I mean, I think that is what we should do here. I mean, this is gonna be brand new anyway, to just willing, I mean, for the same reason we want 600 feet to be our minimum, we don't want little.
Yeah.
You don't want.
Right, I mean,
moving trucks, too.
Oh, I agree.
I mean,
agree. Foundation and.
yeah, so if we can add that, Kyle, that would be good. So did you have anything else in your review?
And my, probably cover that in fact, it might be permanently affixed to the ground.
Okay,
But I'll defer to it.
right, and then, let's see here. Your comments. I've had them out twice now.
So keep them out.
So her comments, were specifically, about the barn dominium. So Kyle, if you could just walk us through the difference between the barn dominium,
You'll get there.
the barn thing and the ADUs. Why I looked for her exact comments that I had here, that would be great.
Lately, there's been a trend in permitting what they're called barn dominiums,
There we go.
where you have a large barn and then attached to that is a dwelling unit as well. And some get very, we'll say architecturally designed as well, where it looks fancy and that, but the principal use almost looks like it to be the barn. And then you have a side wing for a residential unit. Most residents or rural communities, a lot of people have stuff, right? So they want a 2,000 square foot pole barn, and then they want to put a 400 square foot home on it next to it. So that, and I don't want to discredit barn dominiums, but that in essence is what you're looking at, is a large accessory building with an attached home to it that is more likely designed as a, agricultural barn facility. Some, get to like a nice flash and a trim and things like that, and they are produced by an architect, so they look more, super fancy barn instead of just a red painted thing out there. So that's one. The accessory dwelling units are different. They can be a miniature home in that regard. If you're under 600 square feet, they can be a former garage that's been converted. We'll take out the roll-up door, wall that in, put a main entrance there, but it's still the former garage is by the square shape of it as well. So they're different because essentially dwelling unit is going to be attached to a principal property, a principal use as well. Where barn dominium, some residents want to construct that as like that principal use of it out there, being that storage facility. And then they claim that, I don't know for a Seth, I'm going to, Seabury with as well, but they'll claim that, oh no, my principal use is still the residence, but the residence is a third the size of the barn. A lot of our ordinances, we have a cap on how much accessory building you can have because they don't want to turn it into a storage facility with an offshoot on the residence on it. So some ordinances will require that you can't exceed the principal floor area of your home with accessory structures. They don't want to see sheds on sheds in the backyard and you turn it into like a storage lot for a resident. So there's those things there.
Cody, have you had any interest in, I know you've had people call about the ADUs. Is there the same level of interest with the barn?
Slightly less, but there has been a few people asking about it. One specifically, the corner of Meacham and Collier, the house that had burned down years ago. There's still the garage sitting there. He came in a couple weeks ago asking if he was able to convert that to an apartment. I just don't wait until we got figured it out here. I let him know in a few weeks. He was very happy to hear we were already working on it, so.
Well, that is a segue into Barb's second question. I'll word this a little differently, but basically she is wondering if we, so right now, the principal, the owner has to have residents on the property as well for the ADU. She is, I guess her question is, do we want to consider a person that has a set amount of acres to be considered the principal owner and then allow someone to put an ADU there? As opposed to, them having their house that they're there living in and then the ADU. If I'm understanding your question correctly.
I'm not following your question.
Okay.
It was her neighbor who doesn't live there primarily, they live out of state, but during the summer they come up with their camper and they wanted to have like a little structure that they could go and have, dinner or whatever, an enclosed patio type thing attached to it just for the summer.
Okay, so that,
It's non-owner occupied.
yeah,
But I believe they own the land,
Yeah.
so they would occupy.
So they would
bring
be
in their
owner
camper.
occupying their own land.
Yeah,
So how you've reviewed that a little bit too, with Cody or even the assessor, you'd look at what the principal residential exemption is. And if it's 100 PRE, it means that it's owner occupied. If it's 50, it's probably split, half and half. And then if it's 0, it means that they don't own it, they claim residency elsewhere. But with the way we have to use draft right now is you would want it to be 100% PRE because you want that owner invested in that property to maintain the ADU. You could set it for 50% PRE, but there again too, then now you're starting to track into the potential that it would happen of them making it an investment property and now you have 2 units that are rented instead of the 1.
right.
which is, I think, what we are trying to avoid, at least on in the onset here.
Mhm.
So that answers that question that she had, now that we've cleaned that up.
Big time. In a year or two, Cody gets a lot of questions on it, and people who aren't residing here want to do this, to have 2 units. I mean, that is something we need to look at, not so much the ADU, but in general, expand the ordinance to increase housing options.
And that is just done via text amendment to the zoning ordinance, correct?
So then is that allowed for her neighbor if they own it and they're bringing their camper up and they want to build a little structure so that when they pull up their camper.
So that to me,
That
sounds more like the
ADU.
barn situation.
So more of a barn
So is it a
door.
vacant lot currently?
I believe it is.
So then you would want to have a principal dwelling on it.
Yeah.
So if they built like a permanent structure that they could still pull their,
They'd want to have, you have zone for single family, it has to be a permitted use, right?
Okay.
And the principal use of it. In that regard.
I wasn't sure if we had tried yes or no on.
And it's an accessory building on the lot without a residence. So. Yeah, they're kind of in a weird spot to not be able to
Yeah,
do anything if it is a vacant lot, but I can't remember if it was or anything. Is it that big lot behind her?
I don't know. I just remember her vaguely talking about it and it sounded similar to something that like we had done an Airbnb type situation somewhere else. So I was picturing it.
Her area is strange.
I think either way, we move forward with the standards and then changing the design standard to have that permanently fixed, I feel like the further we stray away from that, the more likely we are to have blight situations, to be honest with you. And who knows? I mean, if it all goes well, or we get a one, we can always come back and take a look at this. Any other comments on so we just had the square footage and the permitted district, and then obviously, and also it's gonna be the approving agency is gonna be the zoning administrator, so we're not gonna do public hearings or, it's not gonna be special land use. Those were all the things that we talked about. Looks great. Are we okay to slide this into the draft? With those 3 changes? Okay, wonderful. Kyle, let's slide that over.
Like
Appreciate
it
it.
being a deposit,
Next item, for review, it's gonna be, or excuse me, it's gonna be discussion of new business. It's gonna be review of section 4.22 of the draft zoning ordinance, and that's gonna be the mineral extraction. I believe that is also in your packet. So I did have, does anybody have any right out of the gate questions? I did have, the township attorney take a look at this. And he had some, I guess, revisions that we're gonna probably, need to do. Did anybody have anything that stood out to them?
This is for new inquiries, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there are two specific things that I have. To me, it seemed very vague for quarry ordinance. I don't know if they're in referendum or what they're doing in Berry County, but I know it's a contentious thing in Berry County, and so it needs to be tight. The setbacks for extraction are what stood out to me. 20 feet, I believe. Looked at it online, so I don't need page numbers.
Page 28. I see.
So it was 50 feet from the right of way and then 20 feet from an adjacent parcel. So I'm thinking 50 feet from the road, from the center line of the roadway. 20 feet from the back and side as far as setbacks seem really, really low for extraction.
Sure.
To me.
Way low.
So I would agree. One of the things that I did note is that I think we should try and mirror this to have the setbacks be similar to what our solar is.
Okay.
For consistency within the zoning ordinance itself. And also to protect, the adjacent residents. So we can certainly discuss if we want to make this more or less, or I think we're all in agreement that 20 and 50 ain't gonna as far as that goes. Stacy, did you have anything else specifically that you wanted to add?
No, I'm actually not well versed in mineral extraction, so,
Seth?
I mean, so we went over this today and another attorney and I looked at it. Because she just finished up like a 4-year litigation with a gravel mine. In fact, I might be wrong, I might not even get it, but the point of it is that the standards are very serious consequence. And what happened was we got a court ruling that says if you consider anything beyond what's included in the zoning enabling act, it might be held to be unlawful. Like we had an adverse finding with that.
Okay.
So that's sort of the first thing that jumps out to me. And I think it's a fine ordinance. So we just got to make sure, I think we need to reference the zoning enabling act a little bit more clearly and see how the existing language meshes with some of the standards in the zoning enabling act, because that was a mess and I'm not sure if it's over, if it's still going, but it was, I think the last 5 years. And that's something we want to avoid.
And that was because they were trying to be too restrictive, I
Yeah,
assume?
because there was other standards beyond what was in the zoning enabling act.
Okay,
So I think like it might be helpful if we took a look at it. If I get a copy of this in Microsoft Word, we could track some changes and go over it with everybody. Like honestly, it's fairly quick. They don't think it has to be, take long. And then I think it could be, like, I know if you have a timeline, for getting this done, I don't think that this needs to interfere with that. I think we can just, update it accordingly and explain to you at the June meeting, like, hey, this is what we recommend. If we're good with it, then maybe move on.
I'm definitely in favor of that. I did get your comment, as I was coming in. Seth has, I don't know, it's like 10 or 15, just, they look like small things. But that's why we did ask the attorney to kind of go through it. I feel like what we have in here is a very good start. But specifics, the setbacks were a big one, and then obviously, the buffer zones and there was some clarifying that needed to be done on that. And then it looked like, some questions on like the financial guarantee, a lot of the same stuff that we dealt with the solar, where did we get this number? How are we applying that, which is kind of why I think we should, consider anyway, mirroring the, solar ordinance, just for consistency. I'm not saying that they have to be exact. But I mean, like the setbacks, that was, I think, 300 feet in the solar, I don't know if that maybe is too much or not. But I would kind of like to set this up similar to that. I think that would be a good idea. I don't know if you have any thoughts about just the consistency between, I understand there are two different uses, Seth, but just from a challenging if we get challenged on it, I mean.
So under the zoning enabling acts, we have to allow for it unless.
Correct.
So I think that's the question is if, does that setback to 300 feet impact that standard? And if it does, that could be problematic. So we'll look at that.
Okay.
Okay. I understand, keeping it consistent,
Mhm.
but when there's statutory language with the mining that we have to.
Adhere to,
Yeah.
okay. Seth, do you think that you can have, I can get that over to you so you can do the track changes on it? Is that something that we could look to maybe to see, a draft of at the June meeting?
Yep, I just sent an email to everybody right now to get a copy of that in Word, and then we'll do the revisions and just jump on here, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Awesome. All right, Kyle, is that satisfactory
No, that's fine.
for you guys? And I know that, early on, you guys kind of said that, the mineral stuff and the marijuana, would be best if we kind of, handed that off,
We were aware that Seth and his organization, they deal with it more than we do.
Sure.
So that's, we're definitely happy to have them take more of a lead on this, especially for that, compliance with enabling act.
To be clear, I think it's a good order. I think there's some things we have to, reference a little bit more to make, hopefully more challenge.
Correct. All right, is everybody okay with that and the timeline on that? Okay. Moving on, next item is gonna be review, sections 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15 in the draft zoning ordinance. We had kind of discussed that was what we were gonna do at this meeting. I hope everybody's had a chance to kind of get their thoughts around. I've got, several things that I've noticed in each section. Does anybody want to start us off with that? And those you do not have copies of in the packet, so you're gonna need, if you're gonna follow along, you're gonna need to get in the book itself. All right, Cody, I guess I'll go ahead and start with you. I did ask Cody to kind of, gather some thoughts, especially our Article 10 is the sign portion of the zoning ordinance. I thought that he might have something to add on that, basically, because he's the one that has to deal with those. Did you have a chance to review that at all, Cody, and anything that you're seeing per se?
Not really. We haven't, since I've been here, had too many requested signs, really. The only ones are smaller ones. The only ones we've had potentially any issue with is the dispensary up the street. The only other light up one I've even permitted is, the marathon, like one's Morgan and North. They're changing their whole branding essentially, to just updating that, but nothing's stood out to me in here necessarily.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. It's gonna be page 113, number 3A, the planning commission review. It says in there, so existing construction is gonna be the zoning administrator, Sign permit application in conjunction with the proposed construction of a new building or addition to an existing building shall be reviewed by the planning commission. And I was just wondering if that was fairly standard practice or just in the sense that, so the planning commission is gonna review something like a new construction of a building. We don't have anything to do with it, you know, they just need to follow the building code.
Yeah.
We've had in our community, like, to have applicants and building developers put on their proposed location for a sign,
Okay.
as well, just so we can get an idea of where they want to put it, so we can ensure that it's not like a provision violation or anything like that. A lot of the times applicants don't put that on there, and our standard comments back are, and can be reviewed and approved administratively. So we can even remove that point entirely, if you'd like, and just leave it as zoning administrator shall review whatever signs.
Do we have thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I feel like that would be handled more with, Cody in the building department
Correct.
than the planning. commission.
Yeah, my only thought there was that obviously, with updating the zoning ordinance, the planning commission is gonna have more of a role now. In the special land use stuff and everything else. I don't think we need to have our fingers in this pie. That's just, you know, just my opinion. I don't know. I
No, it
mean,
makes sense. I agree. I agree.
you know, just
Noted.
just my 2 cents, so we'll move on with that. So just going down then, to letter D and number 3, it talks about, you know, the planning commission, you know, review there, so we just need to make sure we strike that out as far as that goes.
There's certain goals, yeah, correct.
Correct, yeah, so we're just gonna take the letter A will go away and then we'll just reword the issuance permit is gonna be
Right.
by the zoning administrator. That I have here. Anybody have anything else?
I can't remember exactly where it is, but I'm happy to see that some signs can be extremely bright to the point where they're glaring the oncoming traffic, and I am elated to see that covered in here. But they can't be a nuisance to oncoming.
Okay, so that kind of, it's gonna be page 115, B section, so it's section 10.004, B1. Signs where illuminated can shine directly into the eyes of any occupant of any vehicle traveling upon the road, driveway, or parking area onto the window of any residence, or where the illumination interferes with the visibility or readability of any traffic sign or device. So that's a prohibited sign. I guess that to me sounds like you're not allowed to have, you know, an LED sign by the road at all. Like,
We do have under performance standards, addressing glare.
do we?
Yeah.
Okay. So I read that and I was like, this kind of made it seemed kind of contradictory, but you know, we do have the performance standing there, so I just thought we'd bring it up and I guess get Kyle's thoughts on, you know, I mean, is that fairly standard, you know?
Some of our communities will work with it in the sense that they can put like an ambient light sensor on it, and after a certain time, it's gotta be, you know, dimmed down. Others say that after 10 o'clock at night, it's gotta be a static image, doesn't change, so that way they're not flashing in with traffic. Some communities have it where it can't change the message at more than every 4 seconds, that way it's just not that flashing and distracting the driver. So we can look at modifying this if needed.
Okay.
I believe the intent with this, like you were language is that we'll give Cody the ability, so should a sign such as, you know, a cannabis related one on thoroughfare have
Sure.
any issues, you can now go here and say that's a prohibited sign.
Okay.
This section, you know, modify or do something different with it, so.
Can you say something about like certain colors, like at night? And I'm only thinking about the Like the Chicago police, theirs are blue and they flash and it always made me nauseated.
Mhm.
Remember, look for stuff on that. 2015, there was a Supreme Court case that really regulated and reduced the ability for municipalities to regulate content of a sign.
Okay.
Read right over.
Yeah.
And that was, it made it so that now a lot of community zoning orders have to be content neutral. And so if we get too far into reducing colors, then are we still content neutral? Now then,
It was
so
just that
the other,
movie.
the legal side of that is, okay, well, how do you know the content is unless you read it? So there's
Right,
other nuances that's more versed than I am. But what we always advise on that, Tony, is just, that it's gotta be content neutral.
right.
So we need to remove, references to construction signs, development signs, so that's all content based.
Right.
So that's where we've now gone the way of saying, you have a wall sign, a freestanding sign, temporary sign. And that way it removes any kind of content insurance. Getting the color. I'm gonna defer to Seth on that, but I'd advise against regulating that because it can run afoul of that.
Right,
Potential.
I could see that. I know
But that's
flashing
kind of
lights,
where the ambient light sensor, that static image comes into play as well at night.
yeah. Well, and then people who have like seizures or whatever, the flashing lights can trigger that, so.
I believe there's a state requirement on sort of, how bright it can be.
Okay.
We had issues with the Dollar General.
Okay,
Where Mark went out and made them move a bunch, how where their lights were shining and where they were shining at and overflowing to. And
okay. Good to know. Thank
If
you.
you're on a country road late at night, those lights help show that road. I've been there.
Sure.
So, you wanna think about the environment as well, because they're not like in the city with big lights or establishments, Mickey D's and everything. Those lights come onto the highway. But if you're in a country road, there's no lights. It is very.
It gives you a little landmarker anyway.
Thank you. Don't be too strict.
Right.
Anyway.
So that takes care of that question for me as far as that goes, giving Cody the ability to stand on that provision if they violate the design standards and whatnot. I just wanted to have everyone take a look at 10.06 right now. That's gonna be the maximum size, maximum square footage. I just wanted everyone to take a look at those numbers to make sure that it's gonna be page 119. Okay with those. Cody, at first glance, I feel like these are almost
I
identical.
like them. The maximum size is slightly smaller. If I remember, I have 80 foot right now.
Correct.
But the setbacks are less, which we did run into some issues with that, because it stated, it was just horrible wording, I believe, but something like a freestanding sign has to follow this building setback or something like that, which, why would you ever do that?
Right.
So like the pot shop up the street, they use the pre-existing footings of the old sign to kind of get around that. It's like, well, this is already here, we're just attaching the face to it.
Right,
So that's how they got around that. But yeah, I mean, anytime anyone's told me about a sign and asked, like, do this really have to be as far back the building does? I don't know. Like, I understand.
So that's something that obviously has been, brought up by McKenna to get us into the 21st century. As far as that goes. But I just wanted everybody to take a look at those numbers to make sure that they were okay with those. And again, slightly smaller than the 80 square feet, but I mean, not so much that I think that is gonna pose a hindrance, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's pretty huge.
It is a large sign. I agree. I mean, I was looking at the number 72 going, man, that's a big sign.
And you 12 feet from the property line too, so you're close.
Right,
Right.
yeah. So, and those are just the max. Obviously, people can do what they want underneath that, but I just wanted us all to take a look at that and make sure that we were okay with those two things, the maximums and then the setbacks that are required, obviously. Any comments? Okay. Wonderful. Let's see here. Article 11. So this kind of piggybacks off, so 11.02, the noise permitted to generation within the township. That was what I was referencing earlier, that there was a discrepancy between what we had in here and what the shooting range was. So are these numbers fairly common in the townships that you guys represent, Kyle? The 55 decimal or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, 45, you're probably at like regular speed, like this, 45 or 50, something there. I mean, that protect your neighbors, so a lot of people really fine. Some areas, maybe milder because commercial or residential as well.
Did anybody have any, I guess, concerns about that number being, I mean, I don't know what our current one is, to be truthful, but.
Yeah.
What is normal voice decibel level?
Between 40 and 50. Maybe.
So then
So I
they
just
can't go
yell
over
all the
that.
time.
So I guess
Well,
my concern there is, no use in the township shall generate or permit to be generated audible noises that exceed, the 45 or 55.
Yeah, but
The
that's-
lawnmower's louder than that, correct?
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good.
So I guess, do we need to drill down more on this? I guess
You want it during a certain hour timeframe, I thought you had that elsewhere, so that way someone's not operating.
They talked about that. There was like,
10 to 7, 10 at night to.
Yeah, I thought we did discuss that. I can't
weekday,
remember.
weekend type
Mhm.
thing, 'cause-
A lot of communities have that as well.
yeah.
Do they? Does anybody have any other general? I'm just concerned about that.
That's the only one. Yeah. Lowest.
We can add in an hour time on there too. The challenge though with this, with it being in the zoning, then Cody's got to measure. It's really more kind of occurring. Other communities have it on like a general ordinance,
Okay,
because then like the police can go out there and inspect and investigate at kind of occurrence.
okay,
When it's in the zoning ordinance, Cody's not working weekends, he's not gonna go out there and, inspect it, it's gonna back at 9 at town. Or it's working more to general ordinance. So I don't know if these, you really know if we have anything in the general ordinance.
I think and we might have a police car ordinance that addresses noise.
Area.
Seth, would
No,
your,
that's-
would your
so
recommendation to
Police power is like.
tackle this be via police powers?
Yeah,
Oh, I think what Kyle has in here is relatively consistent with what I see as far as setting
Okay.
the decibel limitation, but I don't think it's a bad idea either to consider a general noise ordinance. I mean, you'll see like some sort of like catch-all about, interfering with someone's enjoyment of their property, like something along that language. That way you're not tied necessarily to, to a decibel reading, because, I mean, practically trying to enforce that, I think is difficult. You gotta get a decibel meter, you gotta make sure it's maintained, it works properly, and then you gotta catch it. So I think it's a tough thing to, maybe enforce. We do have a noise control ordinance, Stacy, under the general ordinances
okay.
that was adopted in, I think like 2015. So I haven't seen this before. But. Go
I
ahead.
like the idea of putting a time frame on there.
Yeah.
I think that could quell a lot of the concern that I had,
So would you want the board to review the noise ordinance on top of that too? Because we could do that.
I think we should, don't you?
Yeah, we could do them in tandem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
But that might be a recommendation. In some communities that have it in their zoning ordinance that helps for protection against like commercial industrial use.
right,
As you go through like a site plan, hey, if you're gonna be having manufacturing products out there, what's your volume of smoke? Well, our zoning says you can't exceed 50 meters. And that gives the planning commission the ability and the zoning administrator to oversee that portion of the ordinance. If it's general ordinances, then it can be, enforced through law enforcement, power ordinance. I guess it might become to another first level of it too, is who do you want in? Do you want it to be the zoning administrator, or do you want it to be, public safety? And then, to an extent.
Sure.
If you get a complaint.
Right. I mean,
I don't know, I've never really had anyone that could write it, zoning, enforcement, they defer to the zoning district on that.
Sure.
That's not a jurisdiction.
right,
But if you have a general ordinance for noise, they can cite it under that. Under their purview, the follow through. Especially at night, if you got like a loud neighbor and a party or whatever else, PD can go out there at the time of occurrence and inspect, if you're, over the limit.
yeah, I mean, I don't think this needs to be like rocket science here. I
Right.
mean, I would think that we would want the law enforcement to be the, folks to do this, so that would fall under the board's purview. And I would think that I don't speak for the board, but I mean, you pick hours to operate, and then that just quells it right there, like, not, whatever. I mean, if we leave it like this, I mean, Cody's gonna be getting calls of people mowing their grass at 9 o'clock at night.
I get them.
I mean,
I do you? Okay,
Or master contractors or work that I have in ring,
right,
like that, yeah. I was like,
For construction,
Very
I can
rigorous.
see that, yeah.
yeah, and it's, so I would think we would want to do that. I mean,
So that'd be a question for the board, if
Yeah.
they're willing to take that on under general ordinance. If they
Yeah.
say, nope, we don't want that planning commission, then we can modify that.
I think it would be more appropriate for the board to adjust the noise ordinance
yeah.
and have a, first draft reading of it within a month or two, Seth, or is that unreasonable?
I don't think that's ever. It's something we're not gonna reinvent the wheel with, so I think it's
Right.
fine. So it works. And
Right. I think, and the main concern is the mechanism of enforcement and what we're actually looking at, right?
well, and just for a point of reference, so like, when I'm working in the, like the city, it's 7 AM to, I think, 7 PM. Like,
Yeah.
that's just how it is. Like, there are certain things, public health, safety, welfare, that kind of thing, that you can kind of skirt around that, but like, for the most part, like, I mean, I'm not saying that they're not people that don't do it, but then, law enforcement shows up and they can write you a ticket, they tell you to knock it off, they tell you to be quiet until 7:01, whatever the case is, so. I would think that the board, and I'm sure, is that noise ordinance kind of set up that way that we have right now? As hours of,
Well,
I guess it
the
doesn't.
general ordinance.
Yes, correct.
So online, it just references fireworks, which was an amendment to the initial, like the
Okay.
original noise ordinance, which I think exists. But it's not published online, so I don't know what it says.
Okay.
We also have,
the other day.
we also have, I don't know the name of it. It's more of a disturbing the peace ordinance, and I think noise is also in there as well.
Yeah, it's right here.
It's not the super drunk one.
It's on page 34 of the old one.
Um,
What did it have?
It's at the top. That's, I can't get it so low because it's not hooked up to the internet. I could tell you the name of the ordinance, but, yeah.
So I would think.
Whichever
Kyle,
one it
we'll
falls
just kind of maybe see what shakes out with that, and then we might end up striking some.
Sure.
That from the actual zoning ordinance itself. The other, I wanted to just reference, go down to letter D, the odor. No use is gonna have, foul odors that, escape into the atmosphere and, affect somebody else's, use. I know that we've kind of talked about this with, the outdoor grows in general. And Seth, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Does that have enough teeth? I guess is what is my concern. So it just says offensive, noxious or foul odors shall not be allowed to escape into the atmosphere in concentrations which are offensive, which produce a public nuisance or hazard on adjoining property, or which could be detrimental to human, plant, or animal life. I mean, is that cover us? Or we need to be covered, or do we need to add more teeth to that? And the only reason I reference that is because, some of the special use that, that we processed. I know that we've talked about, our current one needing to have a little bit more teeth. I mean, that seems pretty specific to me, but I just wanted to bring that.
Well, this is for future, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's basically, you're not allowed to have you're not allowed to conduct a use on your property that is gonna, do any of those things. Obviously, the marijuana is probably the biggest one, but I mean, you know,
Well, right, and what's operative in here is that it shall not be allowed to escape into the atmosphere, so like, you could still do a use that maybe produces something like that, but you have to contain it,
sure,
and. No, I think that's fine.
we're covered there, okay. That's just something that had come up in one of the use applications that we've done. And, see here. That's all I have in that section. Does anybody have anything else?
Seth, just for reference, I know that you said the noise one was referring to fireworks. The one I'm referring to is the disorderly conduct ordinance,
okay.
and whether we could address noise in that one and do revisions as well.
So. Going for us, seriously.
Mhm.
Do you want a minute to clarify that? If you are.
If you would like to move on.
No, I thought we did. Oh, mhm.
I'm just making sure that the board is reviewing the correct one. That one is outdated regardless. It was high priority for amendment.
I think this might be one of them, the disorderly might be one of the statute, one of the real ordinances. Is it a misdemeanor? That's a punishment, that's. We're looking to change them, I think. Or no, it's a civil infraction, we're looking to change it to a misdemeanor, that would be.
Yeah.
Having, the city of Battle Creek was asking you about that again.
The disorderly conduct one?
Yeah, we were gonna
Yeah.
change that to misdemeanor, so that's something we can do at the board level.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, set.
Yes.
Next section is Article 12, the planned unit developments. This is a little bit more specific than what we have on the books right now. I feel like pretty detailed, and I did take a look at a couple other townships that have, language on this stuff, and I mean, it seems pretty common. I did not necessarily see anything in there that screamed,
Page 125 has.
Thank you.
Brent.
Yeah, I've gone through it. Change.
Yeah, so they have done, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have done the word search on that, and that's all been
So,
changed
also
over.
on that, through my plan, whoever was asking about it last meeting, our graphic team is going through to do a format review.
Mhm.
We will have the footnotes in there. Most likely staff will wait until the, board adopts, just because if you change anything, then they all get money. But that is planned for us to have footnotes in there for the sections as well, as we go here. We may even get it drafted after the public hearing to the extent that we're happy with them. But I had colleagues know that they'll just wait till the end, just make those know that everything's set the way you want it, or you change one and everything else.
So that is something that Kyle and I talked about, because, Barb did want that, just the fact that the document could change once we send it up to the board, obviously. So the second draft that we're gonna get will be, we'll have all of our changes on there, but it will not have that on there. But the final document will, and the reason they're holding that off is because, the board could just throw everything out and make it start over. I don't think. So yeah, that's.
But our team is aware that is what you.
Yes.
And that will be in the final product.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any comments on section 12? The planned unit development? Stacey, are you good then? Okay. We already obviously covered, number 13. Article 14. I had one thing that jumped out to me. It's on page 154. Number C. 2. So the jurisdiction is the planning commission that we're referencing, and it's referencing a capital improvement plan. As amended, the planning commission, after adoption of a master plan, shall annually prepare a capital improvements program of public structures and improvements. I'm hoping you're gonna tell me that's a typo.
That's already being addressed at the board.
Right, yeah, no, but like,
I mean, that we.
I don't want the job. I don't,
Annual report is enough.
absolutely. I don't think it should be within the planning commission's
It's- no,
purview anyway.
No,
So
I
I didn't know if that was just a typo or if that was something that should have been moved up under the,
Planning commissions do review and provide comment on capital improvement plans.
Okay.
We'll change the structure on this just to say, review capital improvement plan.
okay,
But it also obviously gets adopted by the legislative body.
okay,
But they are sent to planning commissions because they do have insight into projects.
Okay.
And that, but we'll.
I get that. I mean, I definitely agree with the communication between the two. But I mean, we don't want anything to do with it. At least I don't anyway.
so the board could do development and the planning commission could review it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that, we do in reverse when we send over our report to
Yeah.
the board, or whatever. But yeah, so I just noticed that and I was like, boy, that makes it sound like we're the ones doing that. I don't know about all that. Right. That was the only thing that I noticed in that, and that is just basically the structure of the township, what's, and a lot of that, is from the zoning enabling act as well, and everything just kind of outlining the different jobs, the zoning board of appeals, the zoning administrator, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Any other comments on that? Nope. Okay. Moving on, last one to review is Article 15, the rules of construction. I did not. have Anything in there? Does this be rule definitions? So I guess Kyle, I mean, this is here just so that we have a set of rules for construction that we want followed, or?
So I'm gonna defer a little bit to the stuff on the, other communities have this in there as well. We give guidance on, how to read certain text with the document.
Okay,
So, shall is a requirement. May is subjective, you may do that. So that's what gives us contact developer to set, I need more of the legal aspect of the rules.
This is more housekeeping.
Yeah.
I read over, I didn't see anything that was a problem, and anytime that we can be specific and, making things more clear for the residents to understand.
Yeah, I think that's fine, like terms that aren't defined in the ordinance, or
Mhm.
you just go by their ordinary meeting, that's.
Okay.
Case law, plain ordinary meeting.
Okay. I like having that in there, to be honest with you. Then I did see over at, the last page there, 159, the term residential districts includes the A and the R district.
Right.
So we'll,
Just gonna answer
Yeah.
that.
oh, you've got your highlighter going too, all right. So we just need to update that to what,
Is that, letter B?
yes,
Yeah, I had that highlighted.
did you? Okay, perfect. Any other comments on that?
No.
Anybody have any other comments that they would like to get in on any of those sections? Okay. All right. Moving on, next item is gonna be section 5.05, the keeping of the animals draft zoning ordinance. So that came about at the last meeting, we were talking about whether or not, because we currently have, if you look in your packet, I had Cody print off what our, current livestock ordinance is. That's not something that I don't think is in your actual zoning ordinance book that you have, the old one. And we needed to decide, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kyle, whether or not we have a standalone livestock ordinance right now. Obviously, they have what they call keeping of animals in the draft, which is 5.05. We need to decide if we want to make significant changes to the livestock ordinance that we currently have, or if we want to kind of go with what they have there, section 505, and make some changes off of that. As one of our public comments pointed out, there is a pretty, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, the proposed language in section 505 is definitely stronger and more restrictive than what we currently have on there.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Kyle, is, provided the commission doesn't want to reinvent the wheel here and make any changes to our livestock ordinance, can we fold this standalone that we already have into and just move that over, or?
There's a couple ways we can do it. We can
Okay.
say, you know, see reference, our ordinance number 381817, under livestock in the zoning ordinance. We can adopt it wholly into that as well. We kind of, I guess, all that stuff maybe a little bit too on housekeeping wise, how we want to do that. If you like the standalone animal ordinance, keep them animal, you don't want to change anything, it's like, hey, like you guys said, we're happy with it, let's leave it, now move on with it, then we can, you know, either roll it and say, you know, these ordinances number, a reference, or adopt it wholly into the zoning ordinance. But then again, if you were to caveat to that is if you change 381817, then you gotta go back in and that change the ordinance number in the zoning ordinance as well. Because now you're referencing the ordinance that's no longer valid. So then you gotta, the zoning ordinance, so there's spider webs, I don't know how that goes out.
Okay.
You know, how we could operate, in that.
Seth, do you have an opinion one way or another? Like, I'm of the opinion that, you know, we would like as much in the actual zoning ordinance and fewer standalone ordinances as possible. Now, if that's not a big deal, or if that's not how things are typically done, then that's fine.
I mean, I see it both ways.
Do you? Okay. Just from the standpoint, like I go to, you know, I wanna have a cow. Okay, I'm gonna go to my zoning ordinance. Am I permitted? Is this, you know, district, you know,
Right.
to me, it should be in that document itself. Is kind of how my brain works, but I mean, that doesn't have to be how we do it.
We'll try to find our current ordinances, because they're not all
Sure,
together,
right.
so I'm afraid.
You know, potentially, we could also look at doing, when we say reference this ordinance number, the standalone one, it could be as like exhibit A in the zoning ordinance as well, and put it under, you know, the back end of it, kind of present, you know. So the
Okay.
language could read, you know, see exhibit A referencing ordinance number this regarding livestock at the end of this, you know, get the ordinance. And then they're kind of tied in, but it's handy per se, and it's not linked by different places.
Right.
Housekeeping item.
Yep.
Eventually.
Okay. Now that we've gotten some thoughts on how we may or may not handle this, I guess as a commission, do we want to make some significant changes? I mean, if you read what is kind of proposed in there, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially given the amount of agricultural area that we have. I guess, Cody, do you get any complaints? You probably get a lot of questions.
Yep, so the number one thing with our current ordinance is people want, sheep and ducks, sometimes geese. But they are usually talked out of that pretty quickly. But definitely sheep and ducks are the number one thing people ask me about. A lot of current ordinance, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Other than that, I haven't heard any issues with like, you know, the animal units, how many we allow and things like that. A couple of people I know have roosters, I can hear them in the morning, dogs. I know exactly where they're coming.
Sometimes they make their way to your property.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, I'm not this, so the question would be, is if you were to amend this into the zoning ordinance, now the legal question is gonna be, which is gonna prevail, your zoning ordinance or the standalone ordinance? So that might be where it would be beneficial for planning commission, as a side note, to offer recommendations to the board and say, hey, we recommend keeping this as a standalone ordinance, but modifying these changes instead.
Okay. I mean,
Questions on our current one, Cause I don't really understand, like, for the goats, is it, like, were we trying to just keep it with dairy animals only? Because I get like the dwarfs and the pygmy, they're smaller goats, but then they go into the Swiss Alpine, which is larger goat, which means that you could actually have the sheep because it's about the same size.
Okay,
So I wasn't sure if it was like, is it, you know, they pets, like getting dwarfs and all that, but the Swiss Alpine and something else is milk goat.
are you talking about number 3 then?
Number 3. Yeah.
Okay,
So I wasn't sure about that, because just looking at the differences in those goats. I did have a concern about why those had to be just thudded. I feel like
Whatever you want.
they have to be just thudded, like they have to burn the horns out.
Oh,
They're easier to catch that way. But also. It's like, cool.
That's right, what you're looking at, but it may be a benefit for you to dive into this to ask or what their preference is, what to do, you know, does the board would even stand alone? Or would they be in favor of incorporating it into the zoning ordinance? And then once the zoning ordinance is adopted, then you repeal this ordinance as well. So it may be a benefit to it before what the difference is and table it until your next meeting if, basically we're there for them to ask.
I would probably agree with that. And you see it both ways, correct, Seth? Where, you know, it's 50% in, 50% standalone. I mean, it really makes no difference other than, you know, and maybe we can somehow put on there, you know, reference, you know, like you said, you know, like, almost like the, you know, the footer thing, you know, reference this ordinance that is standalone or whatever.
And then can we update it?
Well, that'd be a question too for the board if they were, you know, kind of.
So this is a contentious ordinance
Right.
in the township, just for your knowledge. The urban livestock ordinance. Has been ongoing. And what issues do you have as far as changing that?
I just would actually think that we would allow people to butcher.
I was gonna bring that as the one other thing I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Like, what's the, I mean, I get having like chicken eggs and stuff, but like,
For people
You're allowing
raising
people to have-
chickens and you
Weird
have
animals.
rabbits that are kept in cages in your backyard, typically that's for meat.
yeah,
So,
but yeah, currently it doesn't allow any slaughtering on site.
right. And it's expensive to send it off.
But you're talking about an acre, like
Right.
an acre of
But they're
property.
still raising rabbits in cages and they could, I mean, some of them are for sale for, you know, cute cuddly things, but some of them are for meat. And that's an expensive cost to send that to the butcher when you're trying to stay away from the grocery store or offset your budget.
So I think we should probably handle this, set, you know, gauge whether the board would like us to take a look at this or not. I mean, we can if we want to, Tony. But I would hate to have us spend, you know, time and resources, obviously, for something that the board is not interested in
Right.
doing.
My question to the commission and for Stacy then would be, you know, pose this way. One, does the board wish for it to be a standalone?
Yep.
Or do they wish for it to be adopted in the zoning ordinance? That'd be the first question.
Okay.
The B part of that would be if it's gonna be a standalone, is the board amenable to the planning commission making recommendations to modify it, update? So kind of, you know, depends on how you track. So, standalone, then will they allow DC to make some, you know, suggest recommended change?
I know,
You can say
I know they
modernize.
would allow, I know they would allow the second part, I think. The first thing they're gonna ask is what's the easiest for you?
Give it down to the planning commission, let them deal with it. Okay,
That'd be the thing that I'd ask.
okay, yep. Stacy, is that,
Yep, they can go ahead and do that.
okay. and again, I don't necessarily, you know, we discussed the same thing with the marijuana, you know, whether that was gonna remain standalone or not, I mean. And I guess, I mean, it sounds like Seth says that we, you know, you see them both ways, so I mean. If the board decides that they wanna do the same thing with the you know. So I guess I would almost pose that, not just for that ordinance. I would do marijuana as well. Like, so for instance, right now, solar is a standalone, but we have the solar ordinance in this, I mean. I guess I would just gauge what their preference is.
Okay.
Okay, any other clarification or anything we need to discuss on 505 at this point? I don't think so. I think we'll wait back to hear what the board has to say and then go from there. So Kyle, unfortunately, I can't tell you to either get rid of it or keep it in at this point, but that's just kind of how it is there.
I can send out, if you would prefer to escalate it, send out an email, and CC Kyle and Seth as well as yourself, and send it to the board, letting them know, so, we can have that on the agenda, next agenda. And they can give their concerns, and then that way you have the information as quickly as possible.
I think that would be good.
Yep.
And then we can
Is that okay with you, Kyle?
add it to.
Just, advise that if you're gonna send an email to your board members, you do it as. a
Don't
PCC.
violate,
You
yeah.
have to do it.
I'm aware. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on that, or we're all set?
Yeah.
Okay, next item there is discussion of items for the next meeting on June 25th of 24. So we're gonna have some we're gonna have some revisions to the mineral extraction from the attorney's office. One thing that I found when I was combing through this the other night and reading all these wonderful pages is that we did discuss at one point, taking a look at the wind energy section of the draft ordinance. And we've yet to do that. I did not want to amend the agenda and put it on tonight because we had a lot to go through. So I forget what section, it's at the very back. Oh, in Article 4. I guess my question, Seth, can we review that as well at the,
So you wanna do mining, right?
yep, the mineral extraction,
And then
Wind,
you
yep,
want to like renewables?
renewable wind.
yeah,
Wind.
yep, so we've got our solar is in there
Okay.
already.
Do you want
I
an
mean,
opinion of how the current ordinance matches preemption?
correct, the draft, the language in the draft. I don't think we have a wind already on the books, do we?
Well,
Yeah.
Thought we had just bare.
Okay.
yeah. They're currently section 5, I believe.
It's more residential, yeah.
So that's actually gonna be section 4.47, wind energy facility. And it's pretty extensive. It was something that we had early on talked that we were gonna review. And we just kind of lost track of that. So my question, Seth, is that possible for your firm to take a look at that? And
Yeah,
have
I
your,
think so.
and have your comments attached, just like the mineral extraction, so that we can go through that at the next meeting?
Yeah, I think so. Now I see wind. Is there a section number for solar, or is that, I thought you said that was in high school.
Yes, solar is in up a little bit further. 4.37, Claudia tells me. And that is the actual, solar ordinance that we adopted in here, which brings us back to that question,
So that's
Stacy.
standalone?
Yep, that is technically right now, that's a standalone, but that is in the draft. So I think
So we
how,
couldn't combine wind and solar in like a chapter under renewable energy?
Yeah, okay.
we would just have it separated, you know, solar is one and then the wind energy has its
Yeah.
own, okay.
subheading A would be wind, subheading B would be solar. I don't know if battery storage is something that you're looking at or not, but you think that's addressing the preemption, so.
Yeah.
So that battery storage,
Controllers.
Don't you feel that would be easier to kind of comb through?
yeah, I mean,
I do.
yes. There's gonna be a lot of things that we have to consider too, because like, we have the preemption legislation that goes into effect at the end of November.
Yep.
Right, and something we're telling a lot of townships now is like, wait until June to see where things stand, because there was that referendum petition going around to try to get whether the preemption statute would be repealed on the November docket. They're not close to getting the number of signatures. Okay, that's what I heard from multiple parties. So to be sure, I think that language is due, the ballots are due, or excuse me, the petitions are due like May, like 29th or 30th. So by next meeting, we'll know for sure. And if it's not gonna be on the November ballot, then you know that it's gonna go into effect November 29th. And then I can explain like what that means and so you understand, and then we can look at, you know, what our ordinances say, how consistent it is with the state citing and preemption, and what that means if we're more restricted.
I think that would be good. So if we can, if you can review the mineral and then the 4.47, the wind energy, and, you know, have your comments attached with that, and then maybe just plan on giving us a brief explanation of where we stand as a township with our ordinances and whether or not that gets on the ballot or not.
Yeah, I think we have a draft battery storage ordinance that we've done, so
Okay,
there aren't many of these floating around.
okay.
There's just not. I'll check to see if we have one.
Okay. Does that work for your schedule though, Seth?
No, it should. I may have to bring a couple other people in to help that have done, especially, with battery storage. Another attorney was working on that.
Okay.
Quite a bit, and probably with wind too, but I think we get done.
I mean, my first read on this is that, I mean, so what we have now for wind is like a page and a half. I mean, this is almost 30 pages, so. I mean, this is much more in line with, I think, there's just a lot of legal jargon aspects in there that I would like your firm to make sure that we're not overstepping the line there as far as that goes. All right, so we'll have, I guess, some language and some thoughts, on the mineral extraction, the wind energy facility. That was the only thing that I found that we had said we were gonna discuss at some point and that we haven't discussed. At this point, Kyle, do you have a timeline to get us?
So our team is working on updating the draft. Right now, my graduate team is working to get it reformatted to the
Okay.
extent possible. We got the yesterday, it's close to being done, so once she gets it formatted into a document that I can work with, like make a lot of our changes. And I anticipate getting that back to you guys for June.
Okay.
Side, and then knowing that will lead to modify like.
Correct, yes.
But then enough that, it should be hopefully in a happy place for us for June. Maybe potential cleanup still that, maybe or more to miss. And then depending on how everything goes in June, we should be on track potentially for July public hearing.
Okay.
After with where.
Okay. Can you so our next meeting's on the 25th. I would like to give the commissioners 2 weeks to look at, because we're gonna have to look at all 100 and some pages of that before the June meeting to make sure that, all the changes were requested and everything else are good to go. So can we get that by, I mean, is the 10th out of the question? Okay,
And even knowing too that if there are some minor changes we can make those throughout June and before our public hearing.
correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I would like the plan to be, if we can have that second draft by then, give everybody a couple weeks to make sure that, all the changes are done. We'll discuss any cleanup throughout the entire draft at that June meeting.
This is to give the blessing of at the June meeting, you're saying.
Just make sure that we're good with moving forward with the public hearing at that point, because we'll set the date, time and place for the public hearing if we're happy with all that. But I want to give you guys a couple weeks to go through the whole thing. So that's why I was asking to make sure that we can have it by the 10th and get that to you guys with enough time to make sure that it's going to be all the changes that we've done throughout.
I'm confident we can get the content done, it'll just be the formatting that may.
Right.
be the same.
Even if it was just what we have now, just with all the changes, I would be fine with that. And I'm sure it would.
Do we want to address the public comment while we're at it? For the next discussion? Or discuss it today? Regarding a farm stand, being a permitted use? Is
Let's,
that something that you want to tackle today?
let's put that on. So it was the farm stand as a special use, correct?
I think permitted.
Permitted use, I'm sorry.
For the selling of agricultural products.
And then the parking on it was 5 spots.
There, the parking requirement
Mhm.
Yeah.
for a pull-up.
Just a farm stand, 5.
Okay.
Was that in the definition, Tony, or was that actual in the,
In regular parking is,
it's in the parking, so that's gonna be 7,
yeah.
okay. So we would like to review section 7 again. And that will cover that concern within the public comment. Any other? Is everybody okay with that time frame and what we're gonna do there? Okay. All right, next item. Number 10, open public comment time. This can be about anything you want. Open that at 7:51.
Like, you're giving me so much. I'm gonna scatter my comments. I've got a comment about ordinance that you were talking about, odor. Keep in mind that we do have farmers that are spreading manure,
Mhm.
and I know that's an issue nearby where I live with a subdivision that's constantly upset about farmer nearby.
Mhm.
So just keep that in mind, that the wording has to be very careful about farmers spreading manure. Because that is an issue, I know. The gravel or mineral extraction. Seth may be already aware of this, but about 2 townships over, this was a huge contentious issue in Richland Township. And there's probably all kinds of information he knows. So I don't- One of my attorney friends was involved in this as well, and, yeah, it was a big issue. And it continues to be an issue. Some of the, firearms and, gun ranges and everything you were talking about, I still would like to encourage the township to get a copy of the NRA range guide. For $20, you can get an electronic copy, or if you want to spend more, you can get a paper copy. But I think it'd be very handy as you look at modifying or updating things or trying to interpret things, especially things related to sound levels and issues like that, and acreage, that guidebook might be very handy for all of you, or just one copy where you can, pull things out of and share.
You say the name again?
The NRA range guide, you can just Google it and it'll come up.
Didn't you give us a copy of the before, right?
I have a copy. Yeah,
Some of the information.
some of the information did come from that range guide,
But it wasn't
Yeah.
the whole.
and a lot of townships use it as a reference.
Okay.
You talked about lot sizes, trying to figure out what's the best lot size. Well, just keep in mind that if you're doing skeet and trap, you don't need a lot of space to do skeet and trap. You really don't. Compared to, a rifle range or a pistol range. And sound's gonna be an issue. And I just don't know, from my personal opinion, whether 70 decibels is too low or too high. I don't know. I'm a little concerned about it. I just don't know how that affects a neighbor. I do want to address, before I forget here, section 4.30, number 2A. It says, facilities that offer gun safety training to the general public shall be Well, I'm done already.
Go ahead and finish,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. Shall be considered commercial regardless of the capacity. You're saying facilities or a certified instructor. You have multiple certified instructors that on a part-time basis teach gun safety on their private range. So I have a little trouble with that because I'm one of them that does that.
Sure.
Thank you for the extra time.
No problem.
I was by so fast.
I'm behind you.
Yeah.
And just echo, I just agree with most of what, Gene said, the roadside stand, so I can talk about it, you guys, when you guys do address it. You know, just for farms, 5 parking spots, it's kind of ridiculous for me to pull up and buy eggs. You can put something in there of, I don't know how to go with that. Permanent structure up, maybe like the temporary structure, some places say it has to be on wheels or anything else, but what about if it's like a shed on skids, to get these things to, deliver all the time, they just roll it off the trailer. And something that could be moved later on or something like that, but allow that kind of things, because that'd be something that a lot of people are doing. Keeping of animals, when you get into, like, I don't know where you guys are going with that ordinance, if you're doing like standalone or how you're doing it, whenever you guys do write the rules on that, like keeping of animals, there's a difference. I own a goat grazing business as well too. And so we take our goats to other properties and they eat poison ivy and brush and stuff like that. And we do a lot in residential areas. I've done it in the downtown Kalamazoo area, like a block from the farmer's market there. So there's a difference between like keeping animals, like this person has goats there 24/7 or, like all year, versus they come in there and they're there for a day or two and they graze and do the property. So, sometimes the rules on that with the keeping of animals can unnecessarily restrict like businesses like mine where they can go in and it's something homeowners want, extremely popular, and we do a lot of residential areas. So I want to make sure that's just not like excluded, at least I've taken into account. Butchering animals, but slaughtering animals, I would encourage you just maybe just don't even mention it in there, like, in the residential areas. But if you were, maybe you could just say like, homeowner can butcher their own animals, because somebody has meat chickens or some meat rabbits. You don't want them to do a commercial butchering business there, obviously, nobody wants that. But they should be able to not be prohibited from raising a little bit of meat for themselves and slaughter. You can do it from the size of the table, you don't need a lot of room, just put it in the backyard or whatever, don't do it so don't do it in the front yard, something like that.
Don't do it at the school.
No, I want to still do that for animals. When you go to the commercial, for the livestock stuff, one of the things in there said manure removal once per week. What do you want to do with it? Well, because most places you pile it up, during the winter, and then you put it in a pile and then they take it out and spread it on the fields. They're not even legally allowed to put it out when the ground's frozen on the fields, because whenever it's frozen, if you have a big rain, all of a sudden that will all run off and run into the streams. So they can only allow legally, like by the state, to put it out whenever the ground's not frozen so that it seeps into the ground and doesn't fall. So we were removed once per week. I don't know if that would ever be enforced. We talk about noise decibels. Just a quick Google search, 45 decibels, which I think was in there. That is a quiet office or residential area or a light rain. That's the sound. 75 is flushing a toilet. So when you deliver 70 on a gun range, that's the toilet flush is 75 to 85. So normal conversation, what we're all having here is 60 decibels, and a pop-up toaster, doorbell, ringing telephone, or a whistling kettle at 80. So you might want to look at the levels if you're going to enforce levels that, a toilet flush, but technically you're breaking those levels. Barn doors, highly in favor of them. They're extremely popular. We actually built one in Hickory Corners in the Berry Township. My dad built one. It was built. We have the large barn and the accessory, there's a 2-bedroom house in it that meets all the dwelling requirements that township had. So it's a house that just has a large barn. It's extremely popular. You just have people stop by and just look and say, oh my God, I love this. How do I build one of these? And you can make them beautiful. There's some that just are absolutely beautiful. You could put like it's only in the resident or the RAS or whatever, the rural area or something like that, or maybe a certain size. You wouldn't really want that in a residential area probably, but they're extremely popular. So I encourage you not to outlaw those at all, because they're pretty cool and people really seem to like them. And it's a much cheaper option to build versus like, stick built like houses on the foundation. We need the poles, put them up nice and quick, strong. They can look really nice, certain, restrictions on the design of it. But, they're a really popular thing and they seem to be growing out there. So that's what I got.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll close that at 8:00. Item is gonna be planning commissioner member time. Claudia,
I have nothing, so thank you.
Shirley? Kevin?
No.
Tony?
No.
Trustee Greenwood?
The only thing I have, is regarding the animals, both commercial and urban. I think a lot of the disconnect in the community is the Right to Farm Act and not understanding what it actually is, and that it's essentially a nuisance-based thing. That helps regulate farming, like Jean spoke about the manure. I mean, there are regulations and things, that you have to go through when you have farming activities, and that seems to be lost in the public, so I think it would be advantageous for us to make sure that we continue education, and if there's any confusion at the public level during the public hearing, that we clarify that.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I could kind of add that to the list of things if you'd like, because I didn't really look at the animal ordinance much before the planning commission meeting. My focus was on
Yep.
the mining and a couple other things. So like, I could look at the zoning ordinance that's proposed, your police power ordinance, and maybe come up with some sort of recommendation and tell you more about right to farm.
Okay.
And how it impacts either. Okay.
I think that would be good.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, I would just like to echo, I guess what both, trustee Greenwood and Seth were talking about. So a lot of the concerns that we heard from the public tonight was from the actual draft language that we have that we probably are not going to use in all likelihood, because it is just too restrictive. So we'll obviously wait to hear back from the board and whether or not they want us to take a look at that, or whatever, and the attorney's recommendations. But that is just, part of having a large new document, and there are things in there that, get in there that we'll, are gonna take out, as far as that goes. So I just want the public to understand that, if we do make any changes, it'll probably be just to the livestock ordinance itself. And there will be, public hearing at some point, whether it's a standalone via, a text amendment to that, or if we're gonna fold it into the actual zoning ordinance itself, that we're gonna have a public hearing for that. So the public will have the opportunity to voice any concerns that do come about from those proposed changes. I just want that to be known. With that being said, we'll move to adjourn the meeting at 8:03. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.